Hey friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving the 2016 Lexus GS-F. This is Lexus top of the bar when it comes to a high performance four-door sedan. It's their AMG, it's their M. This has the big V8, the most powerful engine the Lexus offers right now, and I'm really just curious to see how this stacks up not only against the F Sport that I've driven before, but, well, some of what you can get from Germany. The Lexus GS-F is really almost what you would call a successor to the last generation ISF sedan. Instead of packing their 5-liter V8 into the current IS, Lexus decided instead to make it part of its larger GS family. But just like the ISF, this one gets unique body features that really make it stand out, like a wider front fender set with functional air extractors. They tie into wider lower rocker trims, all of which work to wrap its wider 19-inch staggered wheels. A more aggressive front fascia with a 2-layered mesh grille gets black chrome and carbon fiber trim. Brake cooling inlets are quite pronounced, and they're needed to keep its big F-logo Brembo slotted brakes cool when they're working hard. Headlamps are top of the line for the GS-F, full LED triple element units that adjust their angle automatically, as well as high and low beams. Signature daytime running lights are of course also LED. The rear deck gets a carbon fiber spoiler that really pops against the bright shade of ultra-wide on our test car. Down below, this wouldn't be a Lexus F without its signature dual-stacked exhaust tips, and they're the real deal, not some trim element pasted onto the fascia. The interior, too, is the real deal, featuring some of the most comfortable seats I can remember in a long time. The S-Spec sport seats were wrapped in circuit red leather and come both heated and ventilated, with both driver and passenger getting power adjustments with memory settings. Genuine carbon fiber trim adorns the door panels, the dash, and the center console, which also has a shift lever that's mounted directly to the transmission, giving you a true sense of powertrain feel when you're driving hard. Around it, up on the door panels and the dash are Alcantara suede accents with blue Lexus F stitching. This blue highlight can also be found on the sport steering wheel, which has paddle shifters for its 8-speed automatic transmission. Ahead of the driver is a fully customizable instrument cluster with an information center and a large center dial for the tachometer, a smaller one for the speedo. What the GS-F doesn't have is the fun sliding ring cluster we know in the RCF. If you're sitting in the back seat, you're going to find plenty of space back here. As you'd expect, this is a mid to large size sedan. Legroom's very good. Now these seats are about halfway between forward and back, so I've got plenty of space. They can come back a little bit further, but you'll notice there's a concave space here that allows for those knees. Headroom's very good. Now I will point out that these seats, you do sit down in them, so there's some pretty good side bolstering here, so you really feel snug. But this middle, it's a little bit higher, so some might find that their head actually touches up there because you sit higher there. Now here you've got a pretty nice armrest that comes down. It's actually got a pretty big space inside, much larger than most. You can actually put some things in there, not just a couple of pencils. The other thing that's pretty nice back here, of course, you've got vents, a 12-volt power outlet, but no USB ports. Because of its thick bolstering, the rear seat doesn't fold down, but does offer a lockable pass-through door in the middle into the trunk for longer items like skis. The trunk itself is generous with 14 cubic feet of cargo space, and under its floor is no spare tire, but instead some extra storage space and an emergency inflator. I really do like what they've done with this interior here. A major thing, the suede trim. It's very comfortable. It's a nice thing to feel when you lay your arm down here, and it really just sort of ups the look, especially up here on the dash where they've got this nice and stitched. Now, one thing that does kind of squig me out, and I have to say it's just sort of an OCD aesthetic thing, is the blue stitching in here. Now, I know it's part of the Lexus F theme. They've done it here on the gear shift knob with the blue and white. It's up here on the dash, but for some reason, up against this red with this red stitching, it just sort of squigs me out a little bit, but that's just a personal thing. Outside of that, very well done interior, high quality, genuine materials everywhere, and for that, it gets 5 stars. The infotainment system in our tester was upgraded with the Mark Levinson audio backend for a very reasonable price of $1,380. This is a bargain as its quality is one of the best out there, and a bonus is the Lexus console puck interface, which I just love because it's so intuitive to use. This is one of the best systems in the business for living with it, but as time has progressed, it's starting to miss some key competitive features like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto functionality that are now becoming mainstream. Technology score therefore comes in at 4 or 5 stars. Under the hood, however, is the technology most buyers are really spending the money for here. It has one of the brand's most technologically advanced and powerful engines, a 5-liter V8. It generates 467 horsepower and 389 pound-feet of torque by way of both port and direct fuel injection and variable valve timing. It's mated exclusively to a sport-shifting 8-speed automatic transmission Lexus tells us is derived from the LFA supercar. It features multiple modes, including rev match shifting both in automatic mode and when manually with the lever of the paddle shifters. You know, this is a V8 engine that Lexus really went to a lot of trouble to really give 2 different personalities to. The first one being the docile, refined V8 that has a nice, smooth tone to it, that just moseys about in traffic and isn't gonna surprise or threaten anyone when they're driving it around if they're not used to the fact that this thing has a lot of power. It's an engine that fits well with the luxury car theme that we've got going on here. But it has to be high performance, right? And if you're going to spend this kind of money, you want the ba-boom, you want the crash, the boom, the bang that you get for that. And so they give you that too. And especially if you switch it over here to sport mode, the first thing that really happens is the transmission downshifts a little bit, gets a little bit noisier. But what really happens here is this engine and this transmission come alive in a way that gives you exactly what you paid for. Woo! Listen to that. Woo! That is the sound of a ticket being earned. But it's a glorious one at that. Now in sport mode here, you'll note this transmission's holding my gear, so that power is always there. Now I'm finally upshifted, but I'm coming into curves here, and it really works well because when you start slowing down and turning a lot, it's picking up on that, and it downshifts for you, rev matches for you. Listen to that. Isn't that nice? It's just got a nice motory sound. Now that we've played with it a little bit, one thing I do need to point out though, glorious as the sounds, is that the sound is actually very manufactured. It's very engineered. What happens is, this actually has sort of 2 modes. It's got a loud sound mode and it has a quiet mode. And you can really tell the difference when it's going back and forth between the two. It's the thing that really tells you that this is totally engineered to sound and behave the way it does, because it really transitions back and forth such that you notice it. And it's not a bad thing, it's just something I really notice. Did you catch that there? It just did it there. On, off. On. Off. This transmission really works well though. You'll note I'm not shifting it manually, and I do like to shift manually, but this does such a great job doing it by itself. Why go to the trouble? Especially when you can just concentrate on turning, braking, listening. Whew, this is just a glorious sounding motor. All this pomp and circumstance doesn't make for eco-minded fuel economy though. The EPA rates the GS-F at 16 mpg city, 24 mpg highway, and 19 mpg combined. I achieved 18 mpg in my week with it, which included the mountain driving you see here. While the on-off nature of the engine's breathing of sound antics is something I might not love if I had to live with this car, it certainly made it fun to romp on up here in the mountains. It's refined, has enough power to put a smile on your face, and feels its price. The powertrain earns 5 of 5 stars. When it comes to handling, the big thing to really note about this car over the F-Sport is the fact that the F-Sport comes with the adaptive adjustable suspension. This one doesn't. This one has fixed dampers. The rate, the settings, they're the same all the time. You don't get to dial the ride, so to speak, on the center console. Here, you still, of course, have the drive mode with Sport and Sport Plus, and what that really does, it's all about the engine, the transmission, and the steering feel. And so it does adjust the steering. So when you get up here and do different things, be it Sport or Sport Plus, you're going to have a different steering feel. And what I like about this is the fact that they didn't make it too heavy. A lot of times they go in and they make the steering super heavy so it feels like you're in a high-performance sports car when you're on Sport or Sport Plus modes. But here, even in Sport Plus, it's relatively light. And I like that because the heavier it gets, they tend to lose feel. And so even here, what I'm feeling is a lot of road surface. And that's because this surface isn't exactly smooth. There's a lot to feel here. Now, when it comes to handling, these dampers seem to be set right up to the edge of what's harsh. And so what I mean by that is this has a very stiff, very staccato ride, but it's not so stiff that it's harsh. It's just right. And of course, as you can tell, I'm in Sport Plus, and this transmission's just holding my ear as I'm coming down this hill and getting into these curves. It's not going to upshift unless I just completely take my foot off the pedal and let it go. But even still, it's holding on, which is a good thing sometimes if you're really carving corners. Now, one other thing, this has the torque vectoring differential. That is a wonderful thing on a racetrack. It really is. You can set it for slalom, track, and normal situations. And basically what it does is it really actively directs power to those rear wheels when you're really pushing this car hard, like on a track. And it can actually push more power to the outside rear to get you around a corner faster. And it's something you can genuinely feel. Now, to be honest with you folks, if you can drive hard enough and fast enough out here on a public road to really appreciate it, you're breaking the law, because it's really a feature. It's a great toy that's best used on the track, and it really can only be truly appreciated there. But at least on this car, it's standard equipment. It's not optional as it is on the RCF. The dampers I mentioned are courtesy of German brand Sachs, and it's also worth mentioning that some of the options available on the V6 GS-F Sport, like the variable ratio steering, rear steering, and all-wheel drive, aren't available here. As it stands though, it's well balanced and dialed in just right, I think, earning a chassis score of 5 of 5 stars. The suspension, being as stiff as it is, did have one drawback on the rougher pavement stretches of my day, in that it caused a good deal of rattling and vibration on the interior trims. This, and a trunk slam that sounds a bit cheap in my opinion, were the only gaffes in the quality feel of the GS-F, which comes in at 4 of 5 stars. When it comes to safety, the IIHS hasn't yet put it through their full battery of testing, which includes the small offset crash. So while we know it performs with good ratings on some of their tests, we don't yet know on the others. Well folks, rounding it up for the GS-F, let's have a look at the specs. Now, as you can see, this one right here, pricing $86K. That is a lot of dough, but the thing is, so are its competitors, the BMW M5, the Mercedes-AMG E-Class. You're going to spend this much money easily, plus probably quite a bit more if you option those cars up. The Germans, they love to get you with the options and option packaging. Believe me, you can add 20, 30,000 bucks to those cars without even thinking. Here, we're pretty much fully loaded at this price, so when it comes to features for the money, I think we're at a good value. And the other thing is, having been a BMW and a Mercedes owner myself, I know that sometimes a rite of passage for those brands is being able to brag to your friends about, oh, it's in the shop again, some weird thing we can't even figure out. Okay, that's not going to happen with this car. We've got Toyota quality, we've got legendary Lexus customer service. That plays into value, which I put at 5 stars. So if you put that in with everything else we've already talked about, we're at 4.5 stars for the review. Very good. I'm Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride. Well friends, if you like the test drive you just saw, click on the link right here. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We test drive 1, sometimes 2 vehicles every single week. Plus, we have a new video almost every single day. There's always something new. so stay tuned.